All right. Thank you for listening to another episode of Remake Rewind. I'm Mike, as always. With me, I've got my buddy Alex. How are you doing, man?
Not great, to be honest.
Is it because of this movie we're going to be talking about?
It sure is.
Yeah, I stayed up late to watch. We're covering Space Jam and Space Jam: A New Legacy, and prior to this, like, nobody would really comment on whether or not this was a sequel or a reboot or what. So we just decided, the hell with it, we're just going to cover it. But I stayed up late on Saturday to watch this, and then I helped a friend move on Sunday. And so I'm exhausted, and I'm just like, man, talking about this movie is just not going to be fun.
Yeah.
But Space Jam 1996, that's a classic.
And I feel like they are both bad movies. Like, 96 Space Jam is not a good film.
But there's something about it
it's charming.
Yeah, so I mean, like, you look at the reviews, and Rotten Tomatoes surprised me.
Sorry, and also, we're exactly the right age for it.
Yeah,
That's a big thing.
8 when it came out.
Yeah, I feel like if you didn't grow up with, like, the hype of Michael Jordan, it doesn't work as well.
No, I agree. And this was also right when Looney Tunes was coming back and on all the time. So, like, I grew up watching Looney Tunes, so it was, like, the perfect time for this to come out. And it also just had 3 or 4 absolute bangers on the soundtrack. I Believe I Can Fly.
Hell yeah, it did.
Fly Like an Eagle, the Space Jam, Pump Up the Jam. Like, the soundtrack just fucking elevated this movie like no other.
Quad City DJs, dude. That was my shit.
Yeah, this I had this on cassette tape, the soundtrack for this.
I wonder if I had it on CD. I definitely had it.
That
and, like, the Batman Forever soundtrack.
We covered this on I think it was episode 4 or 5 of Remake Rewind almost 4 years ago, and is still to this day one of our biggest episodes. Got the most amount of people calling in and messaging in, talking about it. And when you look at this online, I would say up until the last like 3 or 4 months, people love this movie. You wouldn't hear anybody talking shit about it online until we started getting these trailers for A New Legacy. And I think people have kind of retroactively started to go back and say, hey, maybe it's not a good movie. But I mean, I still in Los Angeles see people wearing Toon Squad jerseys all the time. So this obviously was a huge hit. And, 25 years later, we finally got another version of this movie. And we were going to get one a lot earlier, but Looney Tunes Back in Action bombed at the box office and shook the industry. And we weren't getting any Space Jam movies for a little bit. But I'm ready to talk about it. I just sent you a synopsis I wrote. And can you please summarize this movie for us?
When the owner of an intergalactic amusement park sees guest satisfaction plummet, he, as a responsible business owner, sends his top employees to come up with new and exciting attractions to revitalize his old park. They embark on an intergalactic and interdimensional journey to bring the Looney Tunes to their amusement park, Moron Mountain, to save their jobs. The Looney Tunes refuse and cruelly challenge these aliens to a game of basketball due to their short stature and ignorance of the game. Eager to prove themselves, they borrow the talent of some of the NBA's greatest players to transform themselves into the Monstars, taking on the name the Toons cruelly gave them. The Toons, realizing their error, abduct former basketball champion Michael Jordan and force him to compete in a basketball game despite his objections and retirement status, and a complete different sport that he's involved in now. Michael Jordan must compete to make it home to his family and get back in time for the big game in his new career as a baseball player. So I guess you can cut out the thing I said.
No, I'll leave it in.
I never should have messed with your writing. I'm sorry. I'll never doubt you again.
My synopsis is technically accurate.
It is.
But it totally like paints it in the view as like if the Monstars are the good guys.
I'm picking up what you're laying down. It was very good. I also feel like reading your synopsis reminds me of how similar this is to Escape from LA with Kurt Russell.
Yeah, kind of.
Making him compete in the Shrine. It's the Shrine, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Playing basketball. Anyway,
I haven't watched that one in a long time. I watched Escape from New York not too long ago, but I skipped LA.
Those are the ones that we should watch, dude. Fuck Space Jam. Let's just watch Escape from LA and New York.
So, I mean, you mentioned that this movie isn't good at the top, and I loved it when I went back and watched it for Ruin My Childhood, but that was 4 years ago, and I hadn't watched it for probably 10 or 15 years before that. So I'd say when I watched this a few years back, that nostalgia bug was more prevalent, and I was able to overlook a lot of it. This time around, I actually did recognize that this isn't a great movie, but it still had the nostalgia and I still enjoyed it. But certain things, like I think just the 2D animation versus the 3D animation of the new one,
Yeah.
it just felt
Well,
better.
yeah, and I mean this movie, the new one. We'll save this, but in the new one, a huge chunk of the movie takes place in Looney Tune Land, where LeBron James is 2D, right? Like a huge chunk of the movie is 2D, but that was like having LeBron be 2D as well was way less interesting to me. I like the interplay between live action Michael Jordan and the animated 2D Looney Tunes.
I agree. There was just this one just had some charm, and also, and we're gonna get into the new one, but I want to say like the humor is drastically different. Like this one had some lowbrow humor in it, but there were also some really great wordplay, and obviously it's dated because this was from the 90s, but had some pop culture references that were pretty clever, and making fun of some like Dennis Rodman and stuff like that, and the basketball players whose talents got stolen. They go through this. I'd say the 96 one is a little bit more of an adult movie. It has more stuff in it for adults than the newer one. So, there's some, sex jokes about performance and everything with the NBA players, and there's some psychology jokes and everything. Like, I think it's a little smarter than the new one.
Yeah, I think it weirdly takes itself a little bit more seriously and doesn't like try to talk down to its audience, even though its audience is children, but it's not like dumbing itself down. And I feel like the new one, and what I like about the old one too, is that Michael Jordan is in a cartoon and he becomes a cartoon. That's where the humor is based. And Looney Tunes, not within this movie necessarily, but like Looney Tunes, the old cartoons are funny. It's all slapstick. It doesn't have to just be for kids. Like it's like vaudevillian slapstick, and they just make Michael Jordan a part of that. And the new one, it feels like, hey, look, it's LeBron. Isn't that crazy that we drew him as a cartoon? Yeah. And it just kind of ends there. And then they're like, look, it's Superman. And the Justice League, the superhero friends or whatever. Isn't that crazy?
I've got quite a bit to say about that part, and I think, I'm not gonna say it. I'm gonna save it for the end when we get to the other one.
Sure.
But I just think generally, when you look at the cameos we got in this one, even though this was 96 and had a much smaller budget at, only 80 million for, 1996 for something crazy. But when you look at this movie definitely took bigger swings, an $80 million budget on the Looney Tunes and getting Michael Jordan, who's not an actor. And I have to say, Michael Jordan, I think, did a better performance than LeBron, and he had nobody to really act against. Like, he's not an actor. He was working against a green screen and pretty much alone for everything. I'm surprised, like, it's as good as it is, considering how new this was. Like, this was pretty revolutionary. We really only had this and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now we have a ton of things with a human and a CG characters.
I'm a little bit easier on LeBron in the new one. We'll come back to that. But yeah, I think Mike did a good job.
Yeah, I think he did good enough for it, and I think
he did exactly what he needed to do.
This movie, the 90s one is also
sorry.
like...
You're talking about cameos, and I wanted to comment on that.
Yeah.
Dude, like Larry Bird and Bill Murray is worth every fucking penny that they paid him.
He steals did extra. He was only supposed to be in the golf scene, and then he found out what they were doing and wanted to be part of the basketball scene, and that's why they added it.
He killed it. And Wayne Knight, too.
Wayne Knight, that was at one point they wanted to get Michael J. Fox, Chevy Chase, and Jason Alexander, and they all turned it down.
And Danny DeVito as whatever the guy's name is, the CEO,
the amusement park owner.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Yeah,
what's fantastic. Great about this movie, and you kind of brought it up already, where you talked about the new ones, like, oh, look at this character, look at this character. This movie was still meta, but it wasn't just so like up its own ass kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't know if I've seen a children's movie that's more up its own ass than Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Yeah, like this one, like there's a couple different points where like Bill Murray just shows up at the end of the day when they need another player to play basketball, and he's just like, they're like, how did you get here? He's like, oh, I know the producer, and it's Ivan Reitman. So of course they know each other. But that's something you kind of have to know about the behind the scenes stuff, and I think it's pretty good. It's clever, and then they also acknowledge that they're Warner Brothers property. To me, the only thing plot wise that doesn't really make sense, like, I'll buy the interdimensional shit, like Looney Tunes takes place in the center of the earth, and I guess every episode is they're playing live. I
Just
don't
like
know.
Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah, but the only thing that I didn't really understand is they acknowledge and seem to embrace the fact that they're owned by Warner Brothers. Like Daffy Duck has like a Warner Brothers tattoo on his butt, and he's like, "We're the sole properties of Warner Brothers," and like kisses his own ass. And then at the end of the movie, you know, the whole plot of the movie is the Monstars are gonna kidnap the Toons and bring them to their amusement park. Why doesn't Warner Brothers just step in and take care of this? They already own them.
It's a good question.
Yeah. So it's like, you can't just buy these guys. They're intellectual property. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that Billy West was Bugs Bunny until this time around.
Billy West.
From Futurama, he's Doug. Yeah. No idea that was him.
That's awesome.
I've seen this easily 20 times in my life, and
but
didn't recognize it.
He's not Bugs in the new one.
No, he's not.
Yeah. I mean,
but I thought that was interesting.
Billy West is in all kinds of shit.
Oh, prolific voice actor,
Yeah.
and I generally can pick him out of any. I'm like, oh, that's Doug.
Yeah.
But I don't know how I didn't realize it until this time around.
Well, I feel like Bugs Bunny has a specific voice, and he's doing Bugs Bunny.
He does a pretty good job.
Yeah, so it's hard to pick someone out like that.
Anything that you want to really talk about on this one? I feel like everybody who's listening to this has seen it.
Yeah, I also
and they either love it or they hate it.
But I don't have anything specific to bring up. It's just like it's campy and it's enjoyable and it's
it's quick.
Yeah, and that's such a. I know we talk about that frequently. Having a movie that's an hour and a half or an hour 40 minutes does you so many favors versus what was this 2 hours and 15 minutes or something.
Yeah,
204,
2 hours and 5 minutes. The new one.
Yeah, 205. Like that's bananas.
And
how do you think that you can stretch that premise for that long?
And it would be fine if the pacing was good. Like this movie, like it rips. So like if you were to go beat by beat, it's like 1960s Michael Jordan as a child, introducing him as a famous basketball player with a montage, and then it's set up the aliens, set up Looney Tunes, abduct Michael Jordan. Yeah. He has one practice, and then it's the big game. It's quick.
And to that point, Michael's family is in the movie, but only as much as they need to be to motivate him. You know what I mean? Like his family is basically two-dimensional characters, and that's totally fine because the focus of the movie is Michael getting the Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny getting their team together, and Michael getting his mojo back. You know what I mean? Like his family only needs to be in his orbit. Whereas with this movie, they made LeBron's kid Dom. It's the same name as Dom Toretto. They made LeBron's kid like.
Front and
they
center.
made him they made him a three-dimensional character, which like sounds like a great thing, but if your actors can't pull it off or you don't really give them enough to warrant that,
we'll get to it in the story in a second.
It becomes a drag.
Like it drags, but I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on this one. Everybody who's listening to this has either seen it and they either love this movie or they hate it. I personally had a blast watching it again. I recognize it's not a good movie, but I had fun watching it.
Yeah, it's fun. And do you want to talk for a second about good versus fun? Because like The Room is terrible. That is not a good movie, but it is so much fun to watch.
I think what it comes down to is it's something that you're not like. I didn't pick up my phone other than to jot down a few notes, but it's like if you can sit there and watch it and not be bored and have a few good little chuckles in it, like there's enough in here that's funny, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't feel like I wasted any time, and I think that's what it comes down to. Like.
And there's certainly
over.
There's certainly an argument that if something is fun, then it is good.
Yeah. And like there's like you mentioned The Room, like that's so bad that it's good. It circles around. Like if you enjoy something, then it's good. And you I was surprised looking at the Rotten Tomatoes on this. Like the critic score was like 44%. Fans were only 63. That surprised me at how low the fan score was. But that still means the majority of people gave it a positive score. And that's I think there's so many things that this did right, and it came out at the right time, like you said. I think if this came out any other time, I probably wouldn't have done as well. And they tried to do sequels, so that they were going to do a Tiger Woods golfing one. They were going to do a Jeff Gordon race car one. They actually paid Tony Hawk $1 million
Hell yeah.
for Skate Jam, and they had it all set up. He had a meeting. They paid him. He was supposed to go to Australia, film a cameo for a movie, and then come back and start getting in production for this pre-production and working on the story and whatnot. And during that 2 weeks that he was in Australia, the, Looney Tunes Back in Action just bombed, and so they canceled the whole thing.
They should have done it.
Yeah, they were gonna do it in like 2000. That
Tony
was
Hawk,
like peak
Tony
Tony
Hawk is
Hawk.
still a bankable. I mean, even now though, he's still a bankable.
Yeah.
Whatever. People still love Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
By the way, those movies were going to be called Golf Jam and Race Jam.
And then Skate Jam.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, man. All right, should we move on?
Let's go. Let's move on. What have you been up to, bud?
The last time we did this was Captain America, right?
Yes.
Okay. I revisited Talladega Nights, which still rips. Anaconda, also from '97, which also fucking rips. Smokin' Aces with Jeremy Piven.
I like Smoking Aces.
I do too, man. I listened to a podcast with Joe Carnahan, who wrote and directed that, and he's just an entertaining guy. Like, he's fun to listen to, and they talked a lot about that movie. And I rewatched Entourage recently, as you know. So I kind of wanted to get some more of my Piven fix, and it just got me excited for Smokin' Aces. So I went back and watched that, and that was a lot of fun. We should get Joe Carnahan to come on the show.
That'd be cool. There was a point where he was going to do a Daredevil movie, and for whatever reason, Fox rejected his pitch, and then just gave it back to Marvel.
Is that okay? So that's post Lexi Alexander.
Or did I say Punisher? No, I said Daredevil.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. She did Punisher. Right.
She did Punisher.
But that's post Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
Okay. I watched the Tomorrow War, the new thing with Chris Pratt on Amazon.
That looks terrible.
It's so bad, man. I gave it 2.5 stars, and even thinking about that now, it feels too high.
Everybody I know who've watched it was just like, I don't get what this was going for. It was just mashing like every sci-fi property, and it just wasn't good. I saw the thing that you posted on your Instagram story made me laugh, like the acting choice. I don't remember what it was, but it was like a clip of Chris Pratt reacting to something. He's just what?
Chris Pratt is having like a very serious conversation with his estranged father, and his dad is like, you're ungrateful. I did everything for you. And Chris Pratt slams the desk and goes, what? What do you mean by that? Like, the director didn't have the grit to say, hey, Pratt, could you take that again, please? And pronounce the word correctly.
Maybe that was the best one.
I'm saying, I think Pratt was throwing his fucking dick around and they wouldn't do the take again because he sounds like Hot Rod. Quisky.
Speaking of Hot Rod, I know you mentioned you watched that a couple episodes back.
Yeah.
I watched that this last week, and I had fun with it.
Yeah, it's great. Had you never seen it?
No, I'd seen it, but it's been a long time.
Oh yeah, I think that.
But I went back and revisited it. It was fun.
It's like Napoleon Dynamite. It's like a time capsule of that period.
I hate Napoleon Dynamite, but I liked Hot Rod.
I don't mean that it's literally like Napoleon Dynamite. I mean
that's what you meant.
Time
That's
capsule.
literally what you
period.
said. It's literally Napoleon Dynamite.
So anyway, I also watched Black Widow. We talked about that. I watched Filmage, the story of Descendants / All. Do you know those bands?
I mean, I know the Descendants.
Yeah, Descendants. So Descendants is the same group of guys, but Milo, their singer, went to grad school and became a doctor, and he just kind of dropped in once in a while to do a record as Descendants. But then the rest of them cycled through like 5 singers, calling themselves All, but never hit the same peaks that the Descendants hit. So it's kind of a documentary about the history of the band. That was pretty cool. Revisited Dodgeball as well.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's so good, man. And then Space Jam, New Legacy. Oh, we started watching The White Lotus. Have you seen that on HBO?
I don't even know what that is. Never heard of it.
So it's created and directed by, I'm pretty sure it's directed by Mike White, who did School of Rock, amongst other things. And it all takes place at this like upscale Hawaiian hotel resort. And there's a group. There's
Who's in it. That sounds more familiar now. As soon as you said resort.
Yeah. So there's like 5 different groups of guests that are the stories focus on. One of them is Jennifer Coolidge of Christopher Guest movies fame. Connie Brighton is the mother of. And she plays kind of a tech CEO person. Her husband is Steve Zahn.
Oh, I love Steve Zahn.
Yeah, one of my favorite like underrated actors. And That Thing You Do is one of my favorite movies ever.
You'll have to, when we've been on almost a year hiatus for Ruin My Childhood, but when we come back, That Thing You Do has been on our list. But when we do that, we'll bring you on.
I'll talk about that all day. I love that movie, dude. The theme of the show generally is like an exploration of anxiety and like neuroses in modern America and how that plays into like class differences and
Huh.
stuff. And it's just kind of like an interesting character study of these like disparate groups of people. And it's also like the way that it's hard to describe it, like the way that it plays out and the way that it's edited and scored is very uncomfortable, like almost Uncut Gems level uncomfortable. Like it's building tension, but it's also just people talking. So it's fascinating. I'm really fucking into it. I think it's
on HBO.
only
it's gonna be solid.
Yeah, it's either 2 episodes or 3 episodes right now.
Okay, I might check that one out.
But I'm hooked on that.
I'll just rapid fire through some of these. So Hot Rod I already mentioned. I just watched that late one night and I enjoyed it. I got a projector, which you can see on the video sitting behind me. I've had to take it down.
It looks like you're having some trouble with it.
Yeah, I got like the screen that I got was not originally like it was nowhere near the dimensions that it said. So I had to like move the projector back and it still didn't work. So I returned one screen and got a new screen. And then Katrina hated the mount that came with the projector that I got. So then I had to go buy a new projector mount and remount it again. And it's still not quite right. So I need to move it back another like 6 inches or so and then it should be good.
It's really funny that you say that because my friend Fabienne, who worked with Katrina and I on my college short film, literally just texted me and said that she installed the projector.
No, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been my I've always wanted a projector set up. Finally, I got this for like $25 on Facebook Market, and it's it's a pretty solid one. Like this was one of like the upper level Epsons that you can get in like 2012. So it's an older one, but it's plenty good for what I'm using it for.
Yeah.
And it's been a nightmare, but eventually it'll be up and running and it'll be worth it. But while I was testing it, I just picked a random thing on Netflix and it happened to be Austin Powers. And I ended up really enjoying it. So
really?
Like the last week and a half, like it's not a great movie, but it still just has that nostalgia and there's some clever jokes in it. But I ended up watching all 3 Austin Power movies over the last week.
Oh, no shit. I feel like I revisited the first one a few years ago and I was okay with it. But I remember not being able to make it through the third one.
Honestly, they're all equal quality.
Really?
And we did all 3 Austin Powers on one episode on Ruin My Childhood, which is gone. Mysteriously stopped working, and it's the only episode that somehow missed a backup. But we covered all 3 movies in one episode, and that was the same consensus I came to, 3-4 years ago, that they're all equal quality.
I might be willing to rewatch those for a Patreon episode.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed watching all 3, so I ended up watching all 3.
I'll watch all 3 Shreks. And
For All Mankind, I mentioned previously that I started watching based off your recommendation, but I finished it, and after episode 3, like it takes like 2 or 3 episodes to get in and really like get going, and then you hit episode 5, and then it just doesn't stop ratcheting up, like ratcheting up the whole time. Like it was so good.
Yeah, I feel like you're talking about the first 3 episodes of the first season, like literally the
Correct.
first 3. Yeah, I feel like I've seen other people say this online, and I think it's accurate. I think the first 3 episodes feel very much like they're just doing kind of Mad Men. Like it feels like a boys' club, and it feels like the women aren't going to have a voice in this show, and that kind of sucks. But they're doing it very purposefully because the rest of the whole series like deals with all of that stuff it's head on.
Fantastic. Like honestly, the end of season 2 is so good that I almost wish it didn't have that sting. Now, granted, it ended up getting signed up for, or it got greenlit for a 3rd season. But like the season 2 finale was perfect. Like if they just ended it there and said, no, we're done, I would have been like, fucking A. Like just bravo. You guys did it. I cannot recommend it highly enough. You and I were joking. I made a joke that I wanted to make another podcast all for All Mankind. And like I was only half joking. Like I almost wanted, like when season 3 comes around, I almost want to do it.
I listened to a couple of them, a couple of other ones online because I wanted more information from the show. So there's a couple out there. I think we could do it, having listened to them. And maybe that'd be a good idea when the next season premieres.
That's what I was thinking.
We could start going episode by episode and then like review some of the old ones in between or something.
Yeah. No, I think I'd almost want to go, okay, there's 20 episodes and start 20 weeks before the new episodes start. Right. And then by the time the episode starts, just go. But yeah, I cannot recommend it enough. I didn't bring up the video game thing. I bring them up every once in a while, but I started Red Dead Redemption 2 over. I started playing it years ago and I got stuck out in the wilderness and decided to replay it.
I never got into it. I've always wanted to. I like Rockstar.
The first Red Dead is easier. So Red Dead Redemption is I think is a more fun game because it's less mechanic heavy. Like the newer one, you have to, even though it's a prequel, you have a lot, like you have to feed your horse and you have to brush your horse and you have to maintain your horse's health and you have to maintain your health. So it definitely has like a learning curve before it gets fun. But it's definitely a fantastic, one of the greatest games ever made. And then Loki. We haven't talked too much about Loki. We talked a lot about Falcon and Winter Soldier, and we talked a lot about WandaVision. And then we kind of
I think Loki's the best of the three.
I agree, but I think we just didn't talk about it as much because we didn't want to do the same, get kind of caught up in all the fan theories like we did in the first two shows, and so we didn't. But I was pleasantly, I'm not going to spoil it, but I was pleasantly surprised. Like with the ending I predicted from like before the show even started was what ended up happening. So I was very happy with how it went.
Yeah, we'll keep it spoiler free. I was surprised that the last episode did what it did, but pleasantly surprised. I guess I can't really get into it without spoilers. I didn't think that that's the way it was going to go.
I really thought that's it. That was what I predicted before we like based off the first trailer, and I really wanted it, and we got it, and I was very happy that we got what we got. But that's not what we're talking about. Let's get into Space Jam: A New Legacy. Spoilers, of course, if you haven't watched this yet. Although there's not much to spoil, but if for whatever reason you're you're trying to avoid it, whatnot, this is on HBO Max. You can watch it right now. You don't have to go and pay to see it, so it's really easy. So stop, go watch it, come back, whatever. But spoilers, and I'm gonna put the spoiler music that Alex did for Black Widow in. It's gonna be in the edit.
All right, are you ready for the spoiler song? Spoiler. They're coming to get you, and they're gonna spoil you. Spoilers.
I guess I'll summarize this one real quickly. So essentially, it's Space Jam again, but this version, you have LeBron James and his son Dom get sucked into the serververse, which if I were writing this, I would have just called it the serverse, not serververse. That's awkward and clunky, but whatever. But they get abducted by Algorithm, or Algorithm, played by Don Cheadle. Why Don? Why? Because it's so stupid. LeBron James upset this algorithm because the algorithm came up with this, putting all the Warner Brothers IP into one server, and then they were going to use his algorithm where you could scan a person in and then digitally insert them into any movie. And they wanted LeBron James to do that because he's one of the biggest social media stars, and so they could make infinite money by inserting LeBron James into any Warner Brothers movie. And LeBron James was like, that's stupid. So Algorithm abducts him and his son and forces him and his son to play a video game basketball against each other. But basically he pulls like Hook from the movie Hook and like kind of like plays up like, I could be your new dad because your dad sucks, and I'm gonna like I'm just gonna tell you how great you are and just be the father you wish you had, and then just kind of use you against your own dad. And yeah, that's pretty much the movie.
and we should say LeBron is trying to push his son into basketball, but the son actually wants to create video games, and LeBron just like doesn't understand that. And Algorithm is kind of like, I'm going to encourage you to make your own video games, blah, blah, blah. And then the game, the big game, the Space Jam that takes place in the third act is based on Dom's video game. So LeBron has to play his son
He's out of his element
in his own game that his son's built.
Yeah. So I think the biggest turn off to me, every trailer for this movie looked horrendous. And this movie had a bunch of controversies. So the first controversy was
I will say I was not 100%. Like I went into this relatively hopeful. I didn't think it was going to be great, but I didn't hate the trailers. I knew there was a really good chance that it wasn't going to be good.
You hated the first trailer. You and I had a conversation about the first trailer.
Well, it was long enough past during the pandemic that I forgot about it, because I went in with a relatively positive mindset.
So just to kind of set this up, like this movie did $30 million. And so we brought this up in our Black Widow exclusive. Like Warner Brothers is trying to claim that this is a hit. It did $30 million, but it's also on HBO Max, which is free. but you still can't compare it to what Black Widow did. But Warner Brothers is trying to paint this as a success.
What, 80 million?
It did 80 million plus 60 million on Disney Plus. So really it was a $140 million opening, but they're not calling it a $140 million opening. Yeah. So I still think that Black Widow's getting the shaft on that. But this movie, $30 million, which is, for a kid's cartoon, is not bad. But, this isn't doing anything crazy. But this movie had its share of controversies before it came out. So, the trailers were kind of, yes.
Sorry, when I raise my hand, I don't mean to cut you off immediately. Okay. It's just when you're ready. Okay. But now that we're paused, I was just going to say, the movie didn't do very well, which is funny because it's literally the opposite of what the movie is saying about LeBron James, right? Algae Rhythm is saying LeBron James can be in any movie and he'll make it instantly a hit. And then WB puts him in a movie that should be a hit based on the property. And it's not.
And this movie has some meta stuff that I really want to talk about, but I just want to bring up a few things and we'll get in the movie. So this movie had its controversies. The trailers were just, nobody liked the trailers. These were ripped across the internet. And then they had the Lola Bunny thing where people online were pissed because they made her less sexy, but all the sexy photos they were showing were not from the original Space Jam. They were fan art photos. So people were like, oh, social justice warrior thing. And then oh, you put Zendaya in so you can be PC. And it's it's a voice. And Lola is iconic to an extent.
What
but
is
it's not
PC about putting Zendaya in?
I don't know.
That's just a person of color?
That and because she's a millennial and blah, blah, blah. But all these people online were making oh, there's
who
being
do they want
so
to be?
PC.
Catherine Hahn?
Right, but you go back and there's certain characters that are Bugs Bunny. Everybody can do a Bugs Bunny impression. Everybody knows Daffy Duck. They can't necessarily do the voice. Porky Pig, some of these Looney Tunes characters, everybody can do an impression of. But do a Lola Bunny impression.
This is something we were talking about. Scarlett and I were talking about during the movie. Lola Bunny doesn't have a memorable voice. She's a character, right. That's fine, but she doesn't she's not Bugs Bunny, she's not Porky Pig, she doesn't have a voice, so you can kind of put
she's not Sylvester, she's not even Daffy Duck.
Yeah,
she's been voiced by a bunch of different people and a bunch of different things, and she sound I watch these movies a day apart, and she sounds honestly not that different from the original.
And it's fine, she is who the movie needs her to be.
It's totally fine. Yeah. So that was what controversy the trailer, and then Pepe Le Pew, because of all the Me Too stuff, was taken out, which.
But whatever. Meanwhile, they put in the fucking Droogs from Clockwork Orange,
right?
Amongst
and
other people.
Technically, there's a lot of people. They have Pennywise,
yeah,
who eats children, yeah. And in It, not in the movies, but the book It, there's a ton of child sex in that book. It's fucking weird. So there's a lot of weird shit.
And if anybody hasn't seen Clockwork Orange, the guys that are in the movie rape and beat the shit out of at least one woman, multiple people.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
It was an odd choice.
Yeah. So yeah, those were some of the controversies. And since you brought up Clockwork Orange, I want to bring up how distracting these pop culture.
Literally looking at that note on my screen right now. That let's circle around back to it. But the last act of the movie is the basketball game, and the crowd is made up of all these random WB characters, and I could not focus on the basketball game for the life of me.
No. So basically, the plot, we already kind of went through it, but what I also didn't like about this movie was what's funny about this is Michael Jordan had in the previous movie had his little montage to build up that he's one of the greatest basketball players ever. Mm-hmm. But in the Space Jam movie, unlike the actual Michael Jordan in real life, the real life Michael Jordan is a smug asshole and is super self-important. But in the movie Space Jam, he's telling the tunes hey, let's have fun. Hey, I haven't played basketball in a long time. I'll do my best. But he's pretty humble in the Space Jam movie because it's a kid's movie. This movie, it starts with LeBron James as a child being told, you shouldn't play video games because you're the greatest basketball player that I have ever coached. And you are a once-in-a-generation talent, and you're going to be the greatest basketball player ever.
And then the whole... Barksdale.
Yeah. And then every time, everyone's you're the greatest. Even Algae Rhythm is he's the greatest. LeBron James is constantly talking about I'm the greatest basketball player ever because I put in the work. You're my son. You got to be the greatest basketball player. You want to challenge me to basketball? He's not humble in this at all.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me around. I think by the 20 minutes or halfway through the movie, I didn't have a problem with LeBron's character so much. Like, he became much more likable later on in the movie. But the first scene where we're introduced to adult LeBron, he's like chastising his kid for not being good enough at basketball and having like a little bit of fun. And it's such a weird way to introduce that character. Like, don't you want me to like this guy? Why isn't there a scene before that where it's like, oh, LeBron's a hard worker, but he's a good guy and blah, blah, blah. And then the next scene is, oh, he's kind of like tough on his kid though. Okay, well, maybe I see where he's coming from, but also like that's tricky.
Yeah, and like he does realize, like they do early on show him putting an effort where he goes up and he sees the kid building the video game that he's
That's like
made, and
that's like 20 minutes later. Like the first scene is LeBron being an asshole.
yeah, no, you're right. But then
his
his mom or his wife is like, hey, like you should be nicer, like show an interest. So he goes and tries to show an interest in the game.
Right.
But like that scene of him playing the video game with the son was just like over the top acting. It was terrible. But then he's also like, hey, I just got invited to Warner Brothers. They want to give me this movie pitch. You want to come? And the son's like, yeah, gee, Dad, I'd love to go to Warner Brothers with you. And then LeBron shits on everybody at Warner Brothers. He's just like, athletes should never be in movies. It's terrible. He was in Trainwreck and he was in Littlefoot already. It's like, this isn't like his first movie. It's weird that he's kind of like shitting on athletes being actors when he's done it already. And it's this movie.
It's like meta, but also tone deaf.
Yeah.
Or just like, like weirdly misguided. Also weird in that scene is him
Glenn
and his kid
from Walking Dead.
Him and his kid also just have an argument in front of these strangers in a professional setting. You know what I mean? Like the kid is old enough that he should know better, but LeBron really should know better. It's so weird that they like get into it.
Yeah.
Like specifically the kid is like, oh, I'm not, they've been talking about going to a basketball camp, and the kid like hasn't told LeBron yet that he doesn't want to go. He wants to go to this video game camp instead. And the kid chooses that meeting to be like, oh, I'm not going to the basketball camp that I said I was going to. I'm going to the video game camp. And then LeBron chooses that moment to be like, oh, you're not doing that. And
you can be like, we'll discuss this later.
Yeah. It's like, all right, well, we'll talk. We haven't figured that out. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, back to the executives at Warner Brothers that are sitting here.
Yeah. And so like the meeting is essentially what we talked. Algorithm is like, hey, I'll put you into movies. And then LeBron James is like, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. Why are you wasting my time with this? And then all the executives are like, yeah, our algorithm's stupid.
Yeah, and it feels like WB is just doing a ton of like weird cell phones in this movie, right? Because it's kind of a movie about how WB is like a soulless corporation that's devoid of ideas.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And then, so just to kind of start moving forward, algorithm, and this, like, a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense. Like, I could not understand.
He's just slighted. That's it.
What algorithm really wanted to have happen. So through hacking all the stuff in Warner Brothers, gets them to go into the server room, LeBron and his son Dom, and then uses a Tron laser to beam them into the server. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's no explanation as to how he did that or that he could do that. Like, he just does it. Like, they're vaporized or whatever, but they're beamed into the serververse. Yeah. And it's weird because there's like this side plot where Algorithm is trying to be like a father to Dom. Like, there's a flashback scene when he's talking about the development of his video game. He's like, yeah, my dad brought me to like the All-Star game, and I put this thing on my phone. I made an app where I can scan my dad's friends who are also basketball players so I can use them as avatars in my video game. And Algorithm was like, wait, what? You did that? Oh, I need that app. And he has like his little like robot assistant like steal the app so they could do that. But it's like, he's already done that before.
Yeah, exactly. And also, now that we're talking about it, I'm realizing there's a couple moments where Algorithm is like, oh, I know a lot about you, Dom. Like, I know a lot about your life. I know that your dad doesn't believe in you and this and that. How does he know that shit about Dom, but he doesn't know that Dom created an app that can scan people digitally just using the camera?
Yeah. And that becomes the crux of the movie at the end. And I thought this was kind of a bullshit twist at the end of the movie, but essentially Algorithm is like, okay, well, LeBron, if you beat me in a basketball game, I'll let you and your son go. And like, he's having this conversation separate from the son. And then to the son, he's like, dude, your dad like challenged me to a basketball game, and like, he doesn't believe in you, so you should help me beat your dad and kind of put him in his place. And then at the end of the movie, like when the game is about to start, Algorithm is like, oh, by the way, I scanned anybody who looked at your Instagram feed into the serververse, and if you don't win the game, all these people are stuck in the serververse forever, and the Looney Tunes are going to get deleted, like completely changing the stakes of the game. Like,
And-
it doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah.
it's also like, I still just don't get how he was able to, why he needed Dom's app to do that when he could just do it already.
Why does the algorithm have a sense of like a twisted moral compass where he's like, well, listen, if you win, I'll keep my word and I'll let you, like, why? Who cares? You scanned them in, you got what you want already.
Yeah.
Why do you need them to participate in anything?
Yeah, like just force him. And so then this is where the movie, like, they've talked about this before, and you didn't see too much of it in the trailer other than like them being in the Matrix universe for a little bit. But essentially, with the help of Bugs Bunny, they steal Marvin the Martian's UFO because he ends up in Toon World, and everybody left because Algae Rhythm tricked all the Looney Tunes into being able to go into other properties.
And in this version of the WB universe, all of the different properties or all the different IP are different planets, or like planets or whatever within the galaxy of WB properties. So there's like a Game of Thrones planet and a Batman DC planet,
A Matrix, a Harry Potter.
A lot of Matrix references, which made me wonder, like, who's this movie for?
Well, and Mad Max World, and like Mad Max, they painted over Tom Hardy, which I read that he didn't want his likeness in this, so they just painted him over like a cartoon pirate kind of thing.
Another fucking point for Tom Hardy being the coolest fucking guy.
So he essentially he goes to Bugs Bunny, and Bugs Bunny's like, "Oh, I'll help you build a team." And Bugs Bunny wants to get all the Looney Tunes so he can bring his family back together. And LeBron wants to go to all the different worlds and pick the best characters. So he makes like this list, like,
which is a much better idea.
Oh, it is. And so this is where I think they could have done something interesting. So essentially they only go to like one other planet. They go to DC World and try to get Superman, but like Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny like fuck up a rescue, and Superman and Batman and all the Justice League are like, no, we're not going to help you.
Daffy Duck is in DC World pretending to be Superman. And
he's Super Duck.
Porky Pig is Batman?
Porky Pig was Jimmy Olsen.
I don't understand why they're pretending to be these superheroes who actually exist in that world.
In that universe. No, it didn't make any sense. So I thought initially what I thought was going to be, because like they mentioned that the whole premise of the movie or getting LeBron in was like you would slot LeBron in for any character. So LeBron could be Batman, or LeBron could fight Batman, whatever. So I thought like Algae Rhythm lured the other characters and be like, oh, you can go be Batman in these universe. That would have been interesting if like Batman was gone and Daffy Duck was the new Batman or the Superman, but that wasn't the case. Like all the other superheroes did exist. And so immediately after, they're just like, okay, well, we're just gonna get Looney Tunes now, and we're gonna go to all the different worlds, and we're gonna see the grandma in the Matrix world and Speedy Gonzales in the Matrix world. And for whatever reason, Wonder Woman was on her own planet as opposed to being in the DC one. I think it was a comic universe versus the movie or cartoon universe to get Lola. And then it's just like, okay, we're gonna do the Looney Tunes. What I thought would have been more interesting is if they spent a little bit more time with LeBron's plan. Like he went to, have a meeting with Superman, and Bugs Bunny kind of like undercuts him and does something to kind of foil it. Because what ends up happening is right before the game starts, they get in an argument, and LeBron's kind of like, screw you guys. But then like the timer runs out. He has like 24 hours to assemble his team. But right as he gets in an argument with the Toons, the timer runs out. I think it would have been more interesting if he really tried to go after all these other IP people, and Bugs was like undercutting him because he really wants to get the family back together, and they just have to begrudgingly work together, and then during the course of the game, they come together. But that's not what it was. It was just like they set up this like possible antagonistic relationship, and then it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, and to your point, I think it would have even been interesting for LeBron to succeed in putting together his Superman, Iron Giant, Mad Max,
King Kong,
or whoever team, and and King Kong, and like let us see a practice with that team, and then have that trope where like, oh, I got exactly what I want, it's gonna go perfectly, and then something happens to erase all of that, and he gets stuck with the Looney Tunes,
or they're all alpha male kind of thing, and they can't, where they're all used to being the star. Yeah, and they can't work together, so they need the Toons who are used to working as a team or something. Like, yeah, that would have been interesting. but that's not what we got. And then we got the basketball game.
And I felt like Bugs Bunny was being really selfish too when he was
Yeah,
trying
Bugs
to just
Bunny was a
assemble
dick.
a team with his friends. Like I know he wants to rescue his friends, and that's cool. But he's also like undermining LeBron's plan to get all of these people who would be great to help him get his son back.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't they just have a conversation?
Yeah, and like it would have been like maybe he had a bet with Algae Rhythm or something. Like they had the bones and skeleton of what could have been an interesting plot, but they just like undercut everything because they're just like they wanted to have their Tron / Ready Player One, and it didn't deliver. And I think what really hurt this movie was they clearly didn't want to pay the actual celebrities who were in these movies prior for their likeness, because what I found to be really distracting, we kind of teed this up earlier, was when you get into the game, the person that was most distracting to me was Mr. Freeze, because it was Mr. Freeze from Batman and Forever in his robe.
Looked like any of the fucking.
Well, it took me a minute, and the only reason I realized it was Mr. Freeze and not just some random character was because he was standing next to not Danny DeVito, but Danny DeVito's portrayal of Penguin. I'm like, oh, and there's Catwoman, but you didn't see them initially, but it was like none of them were the actual actors. They were all just the characters, but they were like, it was like cosplayers.
They didn't even get actors that looked like it though.
No.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger has a very specific frame, and like it would be forgivable if you just got a guy that's huge and bald. You know what I mean? But they got like the fucking guy down at my gym down the street.
Yeah.
You know,
and
he's got one.
It was
muscle.
weird because they had these characters right behind Algae Rhythm, who was like the coach of that team, the bad guy team. And so we just kept seeing these people over and over again. And then you also saw like knockoff, like these all looked like you go to the flea market and get knockoff action figures of
like
characters.
You're right.
Yeah. It was super distracting. And then like they also like turned all the cartoons into CG versions. And so like they lost, like we saw the Flintstones and Scooby-Doo as like CG rendered people versus cartoons, and I kind of think it took away the charm.
Yeah, 100%. And just about the cosplayers, also like from more of a cinematography perspective, I guess, from more of a filmmaking perspective, like not talking about how inauthentic those characters look. It was just distracting to have a sea of faces that aren't like, they don't feel like they're in the background.
No.
You know? They're as evenly lit as everything that's happening in the foreground. And then the foreground is this, it's not even basketball. It's a video game version of basketball. So it's like NBA Jam, where we don't understand the rules. There's all these crazy power-ups, and you can jump across the entire court, and the points don't make any sense, like 1,000 to nothing for a moment. And you're trying to focus on all of these different things, and visually it's just
it's a mess.
Vomit. It's just vomit in front of you, and I couldn't focus on anything.
I obviously you knew they were going to come back and win, but it was too fast. Where I think like what the first Space Jam did is obviously they were like losing by a lot, but then they came together with the team, and it was like there was a message behind how they came back. It's like, oh, we can be Looney Tunes and win in the original one, and like you just need to believe in yourselves. It was more about believing in yourselves because they were doing Looney Tune antics the whole time. This one they were trying to be like LeBron, and then finally he was like, oh, just be yourselves. After like they kind of chastised him, and then they start to win, but there was no rhyme or reason to like they got the same amount of points like that, which took the bad guy team an entire half to get. They got in like a quarter.
Yeah, it's just like it needed to happen for the story, so it happened.
And then like the end is like heartwarming and everything. Like at the end, they're about to tee off for the last quarter, and you know LeBron's like stop, like he gets the ball, and then he just like freezes and he looks at his son and he's like, man, son, this video game you made is pretty rad, and I really love you. And like the whole time, like they're playing against each other, and the whole time the son is really trying to just dominate his dad, and it's his world and everything. And he's been led to believe the whole time by Algae Rhythm that like his dad wants to beat him and he wants him to fail. And it's like they never have a conversation at all, like in between plays or before the game starts or anything like that. It's just like
they play it like they're estranged brothers who haven't spoken in 50 years, and they don't know what the other one's thinking. It's like, you guys were hanging out a day ago.
Yeah. And so it's like at the end of the game, he just freezes and is like, hey son, I'm really proud of you, and like you did your best and everything, and I just want you to be happy. And like this whole, like the game is running, and like the bad guy team doesn't do anything, just to like steal the ball from him. Like they just let him have this heart to heart, and then Dom switches, but there's only 10 seconds left, and then Don Cheadle's just like, oh, I can change the rules whenever I want. Like they score, and then like he just pulls the score away, and then they have to use a glitch to freeze the game so that way they don't lose. And Bugs Bunny sacrifices himself after.
I don't understand why Bugs Bunny had to do the glitch move.
Well, so I think it came down to, and it was very obvious. I knew something like this was going to happen because at one point, very early in the movie, Bugs Bunny's not acting like Bugs Bunny. Like, he's alone by himself in Toon World, and he like abducts LeBron in like this van, and he's acting more like Roger Rabbit than Bugs Bunny. And he like destroys a bunch of buildings and dynamite and like almost dies. And he's like, I'm a Toon, I can survive anything. And then we find out like there was a glitch early on in the movie, in the game, where if you did LeBron's signature move, it crashed the game, and whoever did the move got deleted. So LeBron's like, I need to save you, my son, and I need to save the Toons, and I need to save the world, so I'm going to sacrifice myself. And then Bugs Bunny, who's been kind of a dick the whole movie, decides, no, I'm going to do it. And then it's immediately undercut as like, dude, I always knew I was going to survive. I'm a Toon. I can survive anything.
Yeah. Did you notice that Don Cheadle looked like Wesley Snipes when he got all roided out at the end?
A little bit.
Oh, so I was going to say that father-son moment between Don and LeBron, the emotional climax of the movie. I actually thought that was surprisingly good.
I thought so too. I thought that was actually well acted and everything. That was the best part, because I thought overall LeBron was like terrible as an actor. I agree with what you said about the character. Like, okay, we understand what his character is going to be. He's kind of a dick and he needs to learn to be a better father. I'm on board with you on that, but I thought he was over the top and cheesy the entire movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he was that different from Michael Jordan in the original, but I think maybe Michael Jordan's a little bit more charismatic, or he had a little bit more to do, or his supporting characters were a little bit better. I don't really put any of this on LeBron, to be honest.
So the thing is, Michael Jordan hadn't acted in anything else. Like, he'd done some commercials and stuff for, the products he endorses. Mm-hmm. LeBron has been in a couple of movies, and also he's the greatest actor on the NBA court with all his fucking flopping he does. So like I honestly expected a little bit more from him on an acting standpoint, and also the fact that this has been in development forever. At one point Justin Lin was going to direct it, and he ended up just producing it. Ryan Coogler was going to direct it, and then he ended up just producing it.
A bit interesting.
Yeah, so it's like they had a lot of talent behind the camera and the writers and everything, and it's just like nothing really came together.
Yeah, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes shit just doesn't work. Speaking of Michael Jordan,
Michael B. Jordan.
So they tease the Michael Jordan cameo at the end, where they're like, "Oh, Michael Jordan's here," or somebody got him out of the crowd. I think.
Yeah, it was Daffy Duck.
Yeah, Daffy Duck finds Michael Jordan in the crowd and brings him in, and they're building up this whole moment where like, oh man, Mike is going to come in and give a halftime speech, and it's going to be incredible. And then, oh, it's Michael B. Jordan, ha ha. And that moment really fucking rubbed me the wrong way, because I thought it was like ironic for how much of a tease it was. Like, the movie would have been better if Michael Jordan was in it. That's how I felt about the whole movie. It's all missed opportunities.
Well, and like earlier I said, like, they would never say if this was a sequel or a reboot, because I don't think they wanted to paint themselves in a corner or anything. And there were only like two subtle nods. There were at one point Bugs Bunny says, "This sounds familiar," after LeBron tells him like why he's there.
Right.
And then the fact that they're like, "Oh, Michael Jordan's here," and they're like, "Dude, that doesn't even look like Michael Jordan." And then Daffy's like, "Well, it was 25 years ago."
Yeah, I feel like they shouldn't have done the little nod that Bugs made, or the Daffy one.
Yeah.
Because then at the end of the movie, I'm like, well, where is Michael Jordan? Why don't the characters talk about having to do this again?
If they were going to do a Michael Jordan, and I'm sure Michael Jordan just didn't want to do it, or they would have had to pay him too much, but I think that's the only way that would have paid off, is if they're like, "Hey guys, there's somebody who wants to talk to us," and then Michael Jordan comes in and was like, gives them a pep talk. And it could have been interesting that because they moved from the Toon World to the serververse, that maybe they forgot that they had this like big game, that they've done this before. But like the Monstars little alien dudes pop up and they seem to be rooting for the bad guys, which is weird.
Yeah.
Because by the end of the original Space Jam, they were like, they wanted to just hang out with the Looney Tunes and stay.
Yeah. I feel like I could talk about how much I didn't like about this for another hour, but I think we should probably wrap it up.
No, we should wrap it up. This movie was not good. I did not enjoy it. I was looking at my phone the entire time. How much longer is this? I didn't enjoy it.
I will say this movie had a real Thanos moment, where I was wondering, after they snapped up all of these people to go watch the game in VR, how many of them were like pilots or something, and ended up killing people. Yeah, man, it was a real mess. I was also going to say the last scene of the movie is LeBron and 2D Bugs Bunny in the real world, and I
Yeah.
genuinely enjoyed those 90 seconds more than the rest of the movie, and I wish that that's what the movie was like.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back and watch Looney Tunes Back in Action because I've seen a lot of articles. I haven't read any, but I've seen a lot of headlines like Looney Tunes Back in Action deserves the praise that Space Jam gets. And I haven't seen it in like since it came out. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back and watch that one. Not do
Well,
an episode or anything on it, but just like,
yeah, report back to me because I don't know if I have the investment to do
the
that.
only thing I do want to close this off with one thing that I did legitimately find funny, is I forgot about this character Gossamer, who's like the big furry red guy.
Yeah,
But he's in the video game that LeBron's playing at the beginning of the movie, which is the Bugs Bunny Game Boy game that I actually had
cool.
and was one of my favorite Game Boy games. I forgot all about it until he was playing it. But Gossamer is in this one, and he's not in the original one. But there's a scene where they're in the game, or no, in the practice, Elmer Fudd goes and rips Gossamer's fur off and puts it on his face to impersonate Yosemite Sam, and I did legitimately laugh at that. I thought that was actually pretty funny.
Yeah, there's a few good like Looney Tunes moments. And
Yeah.
it feels like those have nothing to do with the writers. That's like animators that do Looney Tunes.
Exactly. So I did want to end with like one positive thing. I did think that was kind of funny, but
Oh, I'm going to end with a negative thing. This movie felt like an extended bit from Bo Burnham's Inside. It gave me like a sense of
it
gave me a sense of existential dread and ennui afterwards that like I legitimately could not shake for an hour or so. Just like the vomit of all these other characters and all this money being spent to amount to absolutely nothing, with WB just like self-owning itself at every turn, like legitimately made me very, very uncomfortable.
I don't remember what this trope is called, but it's you probably know what it's called, but essentially like if something doesn't make sense in a movie, but then a character says this doesn't make sense, like that movie feels like they can get away with it because they acknowledged it. Like there's an actual term in movie making for it. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I can't think of it.
But this movie is just all about that. Like they're just like, oh yeah, this is a terrible idea. Oh yeah, Warner Brothers sucks. Kind of thing. It's just like, why are you making a movie telling us to love all your properties, but then also telling us you suck?
There's a line. It's like, and you know, Deadpool is something that does the same thing, and it works really well. I think it's kind of like it's like porn. Like you can't. It's hard to define, but when you
see it, you know it.
You know it when you see it.
Yeah.
And this is that. That's just, this doesn't work, and it makes me feel uncomfortable, and it doesn't make any sense. I felt like this is like, I think a lot about the intersection of art and commerce when I watch movies. So I really like Christopher Nolan, for instance. I think Christopher Nolan is doing mostly original movies on this insane scale.
Yeah.
Talking about Inception, Dunkirk to a certain extent,
Interstellar,
and
Tenet.
Interstellar, yeah, and Tenet, exactly. And even the Batman movies, like he's treating them in as artful way as I think you possibly can.
Yeah.
But he's also dealing with $200 million budgets and trying to appeal to the most people possible. And I think that's really interesting. That's kind of my favorite type of movie, I think.
I agree.
And
that makes total sense.
Scorsese does it to a certain extent too with some of his movies. And this feels like the absolute opposite of that, where it's trying to appeal to everybody. And it's all these different pieces of art from all these different universes and all this stuff. It's trying to incorporate all these different characters and IPs and stuff. And there's so much money on the screen, and it just doesn't work at all. And it's like watching Elon Musk or Jeffrey Bezos like put all of their money into a rocket ship and send it up into the air and blow it the fuck up.
Just because they can.
Yeah, it's just like it's ugly and uncomfortable and feels like a waste.
I said I wanted to end on a positive note, but I totally forgot one of my biggest criticisms of this.
Speedy Gonzalez being fucking racist?
Yeah, that was a little weird. I mean, it was Gabriel Iglesias, so it's it's still a stereotype.
One Latino character on screen and he's just yelling Arriba.
Yeah. No, so one of the things I brought up early on, in the first movie, talking about how iconic the jerseys are and how we still see people wearing the Toon Squad jerseys.
I like the jerseys.
I fucking hated it. Like I sent you a photo. It's like
I
all
know,
the promotional.
You hate that they don't line up on the pants.
Yeah, so it's like basically it's a solid blue jersey, but like the Looney Tunes logo, instead of saying Looney Tunes, of course, is like Toon Squad on it. But it's on the side, and it goes from the chest or the ribs down to like the knee. but like it never actually lines up. So I think like visually it looks terrible. Like even in their promotional material, they never get the jersey to line up quite right. So you can see like, oh, it's one giant image. Like it just looks a little off. I fucking hated the jerseys. And it's a video game. Why did LeBron need all of his compression gear?
Fuck this movie.
Huh? Yeah. Why? Tell us where your plugs are, man.
I'm on Instagram, ranting
like
and raving about this stuff. At dyslexic, DYS Alex IC. I'm on Twitter at Polishi, and you can follow along with the movies I'm watching on Letterboxd at Polishi as well. Letterboxd, please endorse us.
And you can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Instagram, all at MDXpods. If you want to check out what I'm watching, you can follow me on Letterboxd at MDXMike. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/MDXpods. We've been making a real effort to get more Patreon exclusive content. We generally get something out at least once a month, but we've been trying to get something out every 2 or 3 weeks. So we've done, in the last couple months, we've done a Black Widow exclusive. We did Fast 9 exclusive. You get all of our episodes early, and we're going to continue doing that. So if you like what you hear, give us a buck. And you can get all this stuff, and it helps us pay for all the video rentals because we don't pirate or steal anything. We pay for everything we watch because we believe in paying artists, and you should pay us too if you want.
Yeah, we're artists.
Technically. But that's it. Thanks for listening. And Alex, take us out, man.
There it is again, that funny feeling. That funny feeling. Okay. That's what this movie reminds me of, dude. It's that fucking Bo Burnham song where it's like, the lyrics are like, a gift shop at the shooting range, a mass shooting at the mall. That's what this fucking movie makes me feel like.
That special was so good. Yeah, I mean, I think this movie, just one last thing, Space Jam 2 should have delivered a fucking killer soundtrack, and it didn't. There's no song on there that I remember.
That's the biggest sin. And there's proof that works with Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat delivered the fucking goods, man. They knew where the money was.
Yeah.
And they knew what the expectations were.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy is good. But anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.